100,000 networks have been designed using iBwave design tools. My guest today is iBwave's Benoit Fleury, and we'll ask him how to build Wi-Fi networks to meet carrier grade standards. Just join us in just a second. All right, everybody, welcome back. My name is Claus Hetting, and I'm the host of Wi-Fi Now TV, the interview program that brings you all the great stories and not least all the great people from across the Wi-Fi industry. And we have a good one for you today. As always, I'll be talking to Benoit Fleury. He's VP of Product at iBwave. iBwave, of course, a leader in planning and design tools for Wi-Fi, and have a ton of experience with this that Benoit will share with us, I'm sure, in just a moment. Now, before we get into that, remember that Wi-Fi Now, the expo and conference, is going to Washington, D.C. this April 20th. We've got more than 45 great speakers lined up to give you the latest insight on everything related to the business and technology of Wi-Fi. And we also have dozens of exhibitors, including iBwave, by the way, ready to show you the latest and greatest in Wi-Fi solutions. We're covering all the new Wi-Fi standards, cities, enterprise, carriers, security, affordable connectivity, all of that. So if you're in the Wi-Fi business, this is the one yearly event that you don't want to miss. And if you want to join us, you got to be quick, because we're less than 2 weeks away from Wi-Fi Now DC. You can still go to our website and register. The website URL is wifinowevents.com/USA. And if you have any questions, drop me a line at Claus at wifinowevents.com. Always delighted to hear from you, as always. So my guest today is Canada-based iBwave, a company that for a long time has been leading the market for design and planning tools, including for Wi-Fi, of course. So Benoit Fleury, welcome to Wi-Fi Now. Delighted to see you.
Thank you. I'm very delighted to be here as well.
Good stuff. So Benoit, I know you're coming to us from your hotel somewhere in California, which is great. And thank you for taking the time to come on the show today. So for the folks that don't know, just give us the 1-minute introduction to iBwave.
Sure. So iBwave is a provider of software solutions to plan, to design, to document, and to deploy in-building wireless networks, whether it's for Wi-Fi, cellular, public safety, IoT, or any other technologies. As you mentioned earlier, we're headquartered in Canada, specifically Montreal. We've been around now for 14 years. We operate globally, and our software is trusted by over 900 companies in over 90 countries. And iBwave is, in fact, the established standard in terms of in-building wireless design and documentation by most top-tier carriers worldwide.
So you're in a tremendously strong position, and I also want to ask you a little bit later about DAS versus Wi-Fi and the Convergence story, which I'm sure you know something about. We'll get to that in a second.
Sure.
But let's just touch on the carrier grade subject first, because we use this word carrier grade Wi-Fi or carrier Wi-Fi. I do that. I use it myself.
Sure.
So what, in your view, does carrier grade Wi-Fi really mean, given your experience of being approved by carriers and so forth? Can you elaborate on that for us a little bit?
Sure, very happy to. So one way to look at it is, when you pick up a phone, you almost always get a dial tone, right? Almost always. And that is predictability. So, and that's one way to look at carrier grade. Another way to look at it is maybe a little bit more mathematically. You may have heard of the 5 nines expression, so 5 nines availability, which is 99.999% availability. So that would translate something like this for 5 minutes of outage per year. So this is 5 minutes out of over 500,000 minutes, right? So that gives you a sense. So in the context of an enterprise network, carrier grade is about predictability. It's about predictability of performance, and it's about predictability of end user experience.
So very good. So please tell me that that's also achievable. All those nines are actually achievable with Wi-Fi networks. I know obviously you're not in control of the whole chain, so to speak, and you provide the tools for the design and the planning part. But please tell me that's the case. My viewers will also be very happy.
Well, it's just a notion here. So to me, the carrier grade type of network is one which is almost always up. and it's
Yes.
completely reliable, and it's completely predictable.
Mm-hmm.
And you can predict it if you design it properly from the onset. So we'll get into that in a minute.
Very good. So what are the critical components of a planning and design tool for Wi-Fi?
Sure.
And maybe take us through some of the business benefits related to that.
Oh, sure, absolutely. So I think probably the most important thing to start with is to make sure that the requirements are really well understood. I mean, that's part of the overall design process. You want to make sure that the requirements are captured, the success metrics are understood, the KPIs or key performance indicators are well understood, and they have to relate to the understanding of end user experience. What do we mean by end user experience? If you can take this and translate that into the KPIs, that's going to set the stage for a good, solid design. So that's one thing. The next thing is probably the first main step in the design process is to start with a very good survey or a proper survey. And so this is a survey of the physical environment of the venue where we're doing the design. So the physical environment, the types of walls, the type of buildings, and the square footage, all those sort of things, but also the RF environment, because this will have a direct impact on the performance of the network. Also things like considerations for installation, right? Where to install or where not to install, or when to run a cable or not to run a cable. So all that information is captured in the survey, and the extent to which this is properly done will have a direct impact on the effectiveness of the design and the follow-on steps. So that leads me now to the design phase. So it's important to get a carrier-grade type of performance. You want to do that with professional tools. And it's important also to incorporate all the aspects of the network, not just where the access points are placed, but the cabling, the networking equipment, and all the bits and pieces that make up the network. So you got a complete network design. And you also want to be able to visualize that design very clearly, visualize it in 3D. And why? Well, not just because it's really nice to look at, but because if you visualize, for example, where the access points are placed, where the cabling is done, if you do this in 3D, then it's really going to help you ensure that the design is installable and it's going to be maintainable down the line. So this is important. And the other aspect of the design too is to be able to very clearly visualize the performance of the design. The performance in terms of coverage, in terms of data throughput, and importantly, in terms of capacity. You can have great coverage in a building, but if you don't plan for capacity properly, let's say in some specific hot zones within the building, then you're going to have customers that are going to be dissatisfied at some point. And we've all experienced this in different types of venues. So in a nutshell, okay, these are some of the important aspects of the design. Now, the other one, which is really important, and it can never be overstated, is the importance of documentation. Properly document your design so that, first of all, it's centrally stored somewhere. It enables collaboration between different groups or different stakeholders in the overall product chain, or project chain, rather. And so why is that important? Well, first of all, that's going to streamline the overall process, so it's going to save time and money. Otherwise, it can be, a lot of back and forth, especially if the survey wasn't done properly. There's going to be a lot of back and forth. It's going to take a lot of extra time. And but also very importantly is that down the line, invariably, the network will need to be upgraded. Either you're going to need to add capacity, you're going to need to upgrade technology, or something goes wrong and you need to troubleshoot it. So it's very important that the folks that are going to be doing that work have got good visibility of the design documentation. And what I mean by it is as-built documentation. So that's going to ensure that the overall design in its lifetime is maintainable and easily operable. So those
so it's very much right. So it's very much obviously on one side about having a product that with the technical capability, but also a big part of adding value here is getting the process right.
That's right.
Yeah. So that you can actually do this as obviously without wasting time and efficiently and all of that with as few people as possible, presumably. And so
with the right tool, the right training, you can do that very, very efficiently. You can streamline that, but you're absolutely right, Claus. It's a lot more than design. It's the plan that goes before that. It's a survey, capturing the requirements, make sure that things are properly documented so that you have a design that over its lifetime is going to be maintainable. And that to me is all part of the overall design for a carrier grade type of network.
Yes, and I'm guessing here, Benoit, but I imagine that part of the reason why you have been approved as a supplier of many carriers out there is very much that you're also very process driven in your approach, because obviously carriers are very interested in that part, right?
Completely. And in fact, what I've described here, we've been doing this for many years, and at the end of the day, it's not just about the design, but it's about the documentation, it's about the process, it's about how you can streamline it, it's about how you can save time, and how you can ensure that you're going to have a very predictable and a very reliable design. And that's the reasons why we've been standardized with your carriers worldwide.
So, Benoit, let's talk a little bit about what I like to call convergence. So Wi-Fi and mobile coming together, or in this case, Wi-Fi and DAS for indoor systems, or for that matter, Wi-Fi and small cells coming together in some form. Now, obviously, there's various ways we could think of that. But from your point of view, how do you see that developing, and can you give us some insights into what you see in the market? Are these things being deployed in parallel, or is it very much one or the other, or which way is the pendulum swinging, so to speak? Right
sure. Well, I love this topic, and this is a fun one to talk about, and we can go on for a while here. So I love the topic, and one of the reasons, biased reasons why I love it so much is because convergence is very, very much at the core of our strategy. But at the end of the day, what matters is, I mentioned it before, but it's the end user expectation and end user experience. And the expectation, by the way, keeps increasing over time, right? As users are getting used to more and more bandwidth and more bandwidth hungry applications, no matter where they are in a venue or at what time of the day, right? So the experience is really important. It's linked to the expectation, and it's not about a specific technology. So when we talk about this kind of experience, it is technology agnostic. But the reality of how the networks are built, they're built around different pieces of technology. So the key here is that these technologies work together seamlessly to maximize end user experience. So this is just to kind of set the stage here. Now, in terms of, okay, so is it happening? What are we seeing? And yeah, sure, as you said, everyone talks about it. And there's different facets of it. So if you look at the technology piece, I would say the technology, overall is largely there. If you look at the end devices, they all have Wi-Fi and cellular and LTE on it, and so on. So that's there. In terms of the networking equipment, you're starting to see this more and more. We've all heard about small cells. A lot of small cells now incorporate both Wi-Fi and cellular technology. In the early days, it was actually very difficult to accomplish that. But now, to a large extent, that's there. And we're hearing about other emerging technologies like the aggregation of licensed and unlicensed spectrum. So I think in terms of technology, this is happening, and we're quite a way down that path. So this is great. In terms of tools, well, that's happening as well, and I think iBwave is a great example of that. And by the way, the convergence here is far beyond cellular and wireless, cellular and Wi-Fi, but it also includes networking equipment, cabling, fiber, infrastructure, all the bits and pieces, active and passive and otherwise, that are required to create that network. So when we talk about convergence, we talk about convergence in a broader sense. But certainly, Wi-Fi and cellular, whether it's DAS or small cells or any other architecture, is definitely there. So I think tools-wise, that's there. And you know where the biggest gap is right now? It's more in the people, and because you have typically, and you've touched on it before when you alluded to the fact that a lot of these networks are done in parallel. They're typically built by different groups of people. Even inside a company, they're typically different departments. And they have very different ways of looking at the network. And they have different design methodologies, different networking philosophies, and are used traditionally to work with very different tools. So, and I think that is the piece that is probably taking a little longer in terms of getting people to work. How many times have we seen stadiums? You get great cellular designs, you get great Wi-Fi designs, but they're completely separate. And but that's starting to change. That is starting to change. So as you mentioned, I'm in California now, so we've been doing a tour of the user groups here in the US, and we deal with with a lot of integrators that provide designs for both enterprises and carriers. And a few years ago, these integrators would talk about one technology or another. And it's not iBwave that's important. This is a user group, so they were speaking out, and almost everyone is talking about all the technologies, and everyone is increasingly involved with all the technologies. So I think we definitely see this moving that way, which is really exciting, because at the end of the day, it's the end users are going to benefit, as I mentioned before.
Right. Well, it's a super interesting comment or observation, I should say, and you know, I would think that users, including myself and everybody, would expect both to be there, right? To be able to place a regular phone call, or, you know, and have the cellular coverage that you want there, and you want to be able to have access to Wi-Fi as well. Of course, Wi-Fi calling may have changed that a little bit. I don't know what your view is on that, but generally both have to be there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if you're a user, I go to, you know, I use both all the time. And frankly, I'd rather not have to choose one technology or another. I just want my phone to work, whether I do an email or I talk to someone or whatever it is. Like I said before, no matter where I am inside the building, whether it's down in the basement, in the elevator, I still like to look at my mails, on and so forth. Or as I walk out of the building and I'm talking to someone, I want all this stuff to be seamless. I don't want to have anything to do with it. The worst thing, you know, is when I have to enter all my parameters to log into a network. So it's got to be seamless. And if you want, I can give you like a pretty concrete example.
Please do.
Where we've been. iBwave's been partnering with a major carrier in South Asia, and that has been deployed now for over a year, in a combined LTE and Wi-Fi network in fact in thousands of venues. And so those networks are converged, and the planning from the onset, from day one, has been completely converged as well, around a set of very well-defined KPIs for end user experience. And one specific example, one specific venue is a 5-star hotel, business hotel complex. And that has, just to give the example here of this particular network, 14 floors, over 400 rooms, conferences, and a peak user density of 4,000 users, so ranging anywhere between 1,500 and 4,000 users, depending on the event. And so this was a combined or converged network. And at the end of that, so the design consisted in almost 400 small cells or / access points, a total of 17 kilometers of cabling, throughout the venue. And by the way, this is all geolocated on a 3D floor plan, so you can visualize exactly where the ducts are and where that cabling needs to go. And this was an existing hotel as well, so there was some challenges, right, from an access standpoint. So this was done, actually, the entire design, the survey and the design, all those steps that I described before, the generation of pretty extensive documentation to different types of report, cabling reports, propagation reports, bill of material reports, and so on and so forth. So all of that was accomplished in 3 days. So this is very, very impressive. In fact, what's even more impressive is that this was scaled across thousands of venues over the space of between 1 and 2 years. So I think that's a really good example where you talk about a converged network designed as such from day one with the right KPIs. And
really, really quickly done, right?
Very efficiently done. Very efficiently done, exactly. And when you do this in that kind of a scale, it goes far beyond a design tool. This is where you have to start looking at workflow. You have to look at workflow automation. You have to start looking at the collaboration platform. You start to look at what people are equipped, when they're in the field to do a survey or whatever. You have to look at the maintenance aspect of it. So if you look at all these elements, then you're going to have a carrier-grade performance, but in a way which is repeatable and predictable.
Super case story there, Benoit. Thank you so much for that. So what's next? I need to ask you this. What is next for you guys in terms of new products, services, changes in strategy, implementation in strategy. Can you share some of that with us?
Yeah, of course. Happy to. If you don't mind, I'll just step back about a year, just because I think this sets a context important for us. Is that so we've had now for a long time a single multi-technology offering, which by the way included Wi-Fi. What we did about a year and 15 months ago or so is we've carved out the Wi-Fi component of that, and we've packaged it and positioned it and priced it as a Wi-Fi specific suite of product, but which is completely compatible to the rest. You can upgrade from one type of technology to another, or include all technologies together. So that was really important for us because we view Wi-Fi as being extremely important. It also gives us a very, very strong foothold into the enterprise market as well. And when I talked about convergence earlier, this is an increasingly important strategy with a lot of enterprises. And convergence is not strictly different types of wireless technologies. It goes beyond that as well. So I think this is a big part of our strategy. I said convergence was at the core of our strategy. So I think we really accelerated that last year, and now we're building on that. So of course, we keep investing very heavily, not just in one product, but across our entire portfolio. And the reasons why we do that is because we're really focused on providing complete solutions. So we want to continue to provide complete solutions that cover the breadth of our portfolio to our customers, right? Whether it's a large enterprise, or whether it's a carrier, or in some cases large integrators as well. So I think what's the main next steps for us going forward is to continue to invest across that forward portfolio. A few other things shorter term here, we're introducing a Wi-Fi certification. This is just around the corner. And in fact, iBwave has had a very well established certification program for in-building wireless, specifically around cellular, for years now. And we have thousands of certified users. Now we're applying the certification process to Wi-Fi as well. So this is very exciting for us. We would have liked to do it a year ago, but we didn't. We're doing it now, so we feel we're even more ready to do it at this point. So this is something which is new and a little bit short term. And we're also going to continue to expand on our convergence offering, which, as I said, is core to our strategy. We're already very well along the way there, but there's more to come, and we continue to invest.
So Benoit, the certification is a certification of the user of your product, right? Is that it's not a certification of the network, right?
Exactly. I mean, you can have a fantastic tool, but if it's not well used, you're going to have garbage in, garbage out. So, so I think it's important that the users are well trained on how to use the tool. But these certifications go beyond the using the tool as well. There's a lot of best practices that we incorporate in there, because we have experience globally, and so we want to make sure that we've got good design practices as part of this certification as well. But yeah, by and large, it's around the tool, but it's beyond that as well.
Right. Very good. Exciting to hear that you're doing that, because I've not heard about that specifically before. It may exist, but I'm not a super expert on dimensioning tools, but I think it's a very, very good step and encouraging step. Benoit, I just want to say maybe the last thing I want to say is that you're going to be at Wi-Fi Now DC, and you're also going to be joining a panel where we'll discuss many of these things in a lot more detail.
I look forward to that.
Which will be great, and we're delighted to have you. And all there's left, I guess, for me to say is thank you so much for coming on, and I'll see you in Washington, D.C. in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah,
all right?
In 2 weeks. Nice talking with you.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
All right, bye for now.
All right, bye. All right, everybody, that's it for this week's show. Thanks to Benoit Fleury from iBwave for joining us this week, and we will be back next week with another great guest from the world of Wi-Fi. That's it for now. Tune in again next time, and thank you for watching.
Wi-Fi Now is a production of RCR TV News. To suggest a show topic or to learn more about Wi-Fi Now events, you can reach Claus Hetting at klaus@hettingconsulting.com. To find out more about Wi-Fi Now and all things wireless, visit rcrwireless.com.